Professor Higham, welcome to the show. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
Couple of things. The informed leaders, the last email that went out last Wednesday, James, you're one of that group. You've sent it out to me as a Central Otago as Otago Regional Council. You've sent it from the Prime Minister all around the show. It is public. The proposed international jet airports at Terrace. Now, you sent a letter earlier, I think, was at the end of last year, suggesting that the airport should not be built. Why?
Well, the gist of the letter and the Informed Leaders Initiative is one that tries to highlight the research that we think should inform discussion and debate around the matter of the new airport proposal for Terrace. So what we're trying to do is raise public awareness, but particularly raise awareness with the decision makers for a proposal like this, hence informed leaders. We're not claiming ourselves to be informed leaders. We're urging decision-making leaders to be informed by the research that may be very relevant to these sorts of decisions. So that's the basis of the correspondence. Hello?
Sorry, James, I didn't turn on my mic. My apologies. It seems to me, having read the letter... That's all right. I'm back now. Having read the letter, though, It seems to me odd that you are a professor of tourism, but you seem to be anti-tourism, if you don't mind me saying so, looking at the letter. Can I read you a particular quote? Global aviation growth continues to fuel growth in harmful emissions, as it has for many decades, and is forecast to continue to do so over the coming decades. A new international airport undeniably, underlined, invites more growth. Are you opposed to tourism growth to New Zealand?
Well, we're in a rebuild phase at the moment, as you mentioned in your lengthy introduction. So we are in a growth phase now. Prior to COVID, throughout the 2010s, and basically post-dating the global financial crisis, when our Prime Minister, John Key, was also the Minister for Tourism, we saw enormous growth across that decade. And that was obviously a hugely important decade for New Zealand tourism. As you mentioned, tourism is very, very important to our economy. But by the end of the 2010s and on the eve of COVID, we had reached a really critical point in tourism at which it was becoming increasingly problematic for many people in many tourism communities and local communities that had received this rapid increase in visitor arrivals into their communities during this time. But the so-called social license for tourism, the acceptance and the warm welcome of Kiwis in those communities was becoming rather exhausted, and people were becoming a bit jaded and a bit tired of having so many transient people, tourists, moving through their communities and in many ways using infrastructures that were running behind the growth curve. So people's lives, lifestyles, ways of living, daily routines were being increasingly compromised by tourism. And this was captured by a report published in December 2019 by the Parliamentary Commissioner for the Environment, who said we really need to rethink how we manage tourism in this country, because we need to make sure that tourism, A, doesn't exhaust the environmental resources that are fundamental to visitor experiences, but also that it doesn't exhaust social license and exhaust the welcome of Kiwis that is obviously so important to tourism. So the COVID interruption has provided quite a timely window for us to reflect upon tourism and reflect upon what might be in the best interests of tourism for the New Zealand economy in the rebuild and reset for the future.
Can I just say, that seems incredibly and middle class and out of touch, that view, James. And can I put it to you as somebody who lives in a tourism area? You don't live here, and certainly Simon Upton, the Parliamentary Commissioner for the Environment, doesn't live here. You're both well-heeled and educated and literate and Simon Upton's case, well paid, I'm sure. But for us who live here, tourism is our bread and butter. It is what makes us live here and prosper. We were irritated by the fact that authorities were letting us down in terms, for example, like freedom camping and things like that they weren't bringing in the regulations. But we weren't trying to stop the number of tourists coming in here. They are the reason why our economy works. Don't you think?
No, I completely and utterly disagree. These reports that have been produced based on insights and investigation. I don't know who you're speaking on behalf of when you say us and we.
Well, just about everybody who lives here.
You can't be talking about everyone who lives there, because that's contradictory to the well-reported social sentiments that have been identified, for example, by the tourism industry Aotearoa, the National Tourism Industry Association.
Then they clearly don't know what they're talking about. Can I just say, Professor Higham, every one of us who lives in Central, or most of us who live in Central Otago and the lakes, we are migrants. We came here to live here because we like the lifestyle. But we are coming in droves and tens of thousands. This is one of the largest growing areas in New Zealand. And tourism is in part responsible for that. It provides us with jobs. It provides us with security. It provides us with, if you like, a degree of security that we don't see, and a lifestyle that we don't see anywhere else. So, I mean, we wouldn't be here unless there were jobs. And so we don't find tourism as a negative factor. We just want to make sure that some of the peripheral stuff, and freedom camping is a really good example of that, is managed appropriately. But at no stage do we not want people to come here.
So on what grounds do you discredit tourism industry Aotearoa's
listen, because they haven't talked to us. I'm an elected member of the Otago Regional Council. I'm in the Dunstan ward. I've lived here for the last, almost the last decade. I'm an elected representative of the people of the communities that I service. Queenstown, Wanaka, Alexandra, Cromwell, Central Otago and the Maniatoto. Tourism industry is regarded as vital to our economies and to the people who live here. And most of us who've come to this area are migrants. We weren't born and raised here. We came here for that lifestyle, but also many of us brought the industries that service the tourism industry in general.
And the interesting story of my lifetime is that when I was a child, more Australians migrated to New Zealand than vice versa. The New Zealand dollar was worth more than the Australian dollar. Australia was poorer per capita than we were. And it seems incredible to say that now, but look at what's happened. Australia is now richer than us, 35%. 35%, and that we have 500,000 New Zealanders living there. Should we worry about that? I believe we should. I think the government's right to have a goal to try to lift our prosperity, but they seem to have not the faintest idea how to do it. Now, here's another thing. Well, in New Zealand, at least we have a nice, easygoing lifestyle, don't we? We may not be as rich as the Aussies, but we have a good lifestyle. Maybe we need to work a bit harder, then we'd be richer. Well, you won't see New Zealand on this graph, but I'm going to show you in a moment. You might guess where it is. This is how hard country works, how many hours you work per capita. So up there, harder work. Look at the Icelanders, they work really hard. Don't know what they do in Iceland, but they work very hard. Over here is how much you make for every hour you work. Look at the French. The French don't work at all, basically, but they are the most productive in the world. The United States, of course, is the most prosperous because you have to multiply this axis by that axis to get prosperity. But isn't it great to be French? Where's New Zealand? That's us. We are the second hardest working country in the OECD, but we are the lowest in terms of productivity. We are poor because we choose to be poor. I repeat that, we choose to be poor. Our education system is as good as any of those countries there, the French, the Swedes, the Danes, but we choose to work in low-wage activities. That's what we do in New Zealand. I'll come back to that point in a moment. Well, look, maybe we need more tourists. This will be great. Our Prime Minister believes that. He's Minister of Tourism. Tourism's great. If you walk across the Tongariro Crossing, you'll only meet 600 people on that. Perhaps we need to have a few thousand people doing the Tongariro Crossing every day. Instead of 10,000 visitors to Milford Sound every week, we could have, say, 40,000. That would be rather nice, wouldn't it? And that would make us rich. Let me tell you something very interesting about New Zealand. Our per capita GDP is about $40,000 odd a year. There are 1.3 million jobs in New Zealand, 1.3 million FTE. That means to maintain our current per capita GDP, we need $120,000 per job. What does tourism earn? About $80,000 a job. About 2/3 of what we need. More tourism, poorer you get. Tourism is great for employing unskilled people. It is absolutely not a route to prosperity. The wine industry, of which we're so proud, $90,000 a job. So why have we got any prosperity at all? Well, food manufacturing comes in pretty close to the average, but up at the top there is Fonterra. Without the dairy industry, New Zealand would be desperately poor. It's an astonishing thing. $350,000 a job in the dairy industry. Unfortunately, the workers don't get paid that much, but that's what it earns. Manufacturing is quite high. And there's some other companies up there that are rather interesting, like this one, Fisher and Paykel Healthcare. By the way, the area under those little bars represents the total impact on the economy. So Fisher and Paykel Healthcare, great, almost as good as dairy, but we need a few more of them. I'll come back to that point in a moment. But it's very illuminating. I find that metric quite an interesting one. What we think, $350,000 a job, that's good. I'm sorry. Apple Computer, $2 million a job. Samsung, $1.3 million a job. I mean, in the real world out there of highly productive business, we are not even looking at that. We haven't a clue what productivity really is. The French do, and they don't seem to work at all, which is great.